My name is Tyler Brennan, and on April 18th, I learned exactly how dangerous it can be when a spoiled heir thinks the world owes him obedience. It started like any other Thursday morning. I was in my office by 6:30 a.m. Old habit from 23 years in the business, coffee in one hand, organizing the quarterly reports for our biggest client. The same client who'd practically saved the company from bankruptcy last year. The same client worth $47 million annually. That's when the door slammed open. Nathaniel Carter, 19 years old, son of our CEO, heir to a company he had never worked a single honest day for. He marched in, designer suit hanging awkwardly on his lanky frame, eyes showing pure fury, the kind only a spoiled child can muster when someone dares tell them no. "You think you can ignore me?" he barked, slamming his fist on my desk. I didn't flinch. Didn't look up from the report I was reviewing. Let him stew in his own fury for 10 long seconds. At 49, after staring down hostile takeovers in 3 continents, this kid's tantrum was amateur hour. Finally, I set down my pen, looked up, met his eyes. "Nathaniel," I said, keeping my voice steady, "I don't take orders from interns." His face turned red. "I'm the future CEO. You'll regret this." I raised an eyebrow. "Then I'll deal with you when you're actually the CEO." I gestured politely toward the door. "Until then, please leave my office." I knew brushing him off like that would come back to bite me. I just didn't expect it to be that same night. Let me take you back a few months. That's when our CEO, Richard Carter, announced his son would be joining the company for experience. Most of us assumed Nathaniel would spend a few weeks shadowing departments before getting bored and vanishing back to whatever luxury resort he'd crawled out of. We were wrong. Nathaniel was handed the title of Junior Operations Director, a title I'd earned after 5 years of blood, sweat, and late nights. He got it with no actual qualifications and no understanding of how our company worked. And somehow in his mind, that meant I was supposed to take orders from him. At first, I played along. I corrected his mistakes quietly. I fixed his disastrous proposals before they reached clients. I even covered for him when he missed deadlines. Why? Because I valued my career. Because I believed in this company. And maybe because I thought he'd grow up. I was wrong about that too. The breaking point came 2 weeks before that Thursday morning. Nathaniel barged into my office, tossed a file on my desk, and said, "Fire the Johnson team." They annoyed me. The Johnson team, my team, had just secured a $5 million contract for the company. "I'm not firing anyone because they annoyed you," I said, keeping my voice calm. His response? "I'll tell my father you refused a direct order." I met his gaze without flinching. "Go ahead," he stormed out. I thought that would be the end of it. I thought his father would knock some sense into him. But I'd underestimated how far entitlement would go. 3 months before that confrontation, I'd noticed things shifting. Clients were getting nervous. Senior managers were asking strange questions. Several high-level partnerships, ones I had personally negotiated, were suddenly being reassigned. It didn't take a genius to realize Nathaniel was positioning himself. He wanted to control the international division I'd built from scratch. And Richard was letting him. So I did the one thing they didn't expect. I started documenting everything. Every email, every meeting note, every client concern about Nathaniel's behavior. 43 forwarded emails showing him ordering departments to falsify delivery reports, demanding the finance team adjust numbers to make his forecasts look good, threatening my career directly. But I wasn't stupid enough to keep that information to myself. I reached out to 2 people I trusted more than anyone in the company. Gregory Porter, our head of compliance, and Alan Fletcher, our senior legal counsel. Both of them had worked alongside me for years. Both of them had quietly expressed concerns about Nathaniel's behavior. We didn't meet for coffee in some sterile conference room. We met at McGill's, the Irish pub 3 blocks from the office where real deals got done after the official deals were signed. "Whiskey?" I asked as they slid into the booth. "Jameson," Gregory said. "Neat," Alan nodded. "Same," I signaled the bartender. 3 fingers each. For 5 minutes, we didn't talk about work. Sports. Gregory's daughter's soccer championship. Alan's fishing trip to Montana. The way guys do when they're building up to something serious. Then Gregory set down his glass. "So, the Carter kid." I exhaled. "Yeah." Alan leaned in. "How bad?" I pulled out my phone, opened the folder I'd been building. Scrolled slowly. 43 emails of him ordering people to falsify reports, manipulate numbers, fire teams that annoyed him, including the Johnson team who just secured us $5 million. Gregory whistled low. "Richard knows?" Alan asked. Richard's got his head in the sand. Willfully. Silence. The weight of what came next hung between us. If we do this, Gregory said carefully, we're betting our careers. I met his eyes. I know. Alan leaned back. I'm already running the numbers. Fiduciary breach. Compliance violations. It's all there. Memos ready? I asked. Can be. By Monday. Gregory swirled his whiskey. You know, if we burn this bridge, there's no going back. I'm 49, I said. 2 kids in college pipeline. Mortgage. Retirement to think about. You think I'm doing this for fun? So why do it? Gregory asked, though we all knew the answer. Because I'm not letting a spoiled brat destroy what we built. Not after 23 years. Not after what this division means. I paused. And because if we don't stop this now, it'll never stop. Alan raised his glass. To doing the right thing, even when it costs us. Gregory clinked. To not rolling over for entitled punks. I raised mine. To building something that matters. We drank, and the war began. That wasn't all, though. The final piece of the puzzle was our largest international client, Eastbridge Global Holdings. I'd built that relationship personally, and I knew for a fact they had serious concerns about Nathaniel after a disastrous meeting he'd led without me. So I reached out to Andrea Wells, their head of partnerships. We met for lunch. No pressure, no agenda. But when I casually asked about their plans for future contracts, Andrea gave me a knowing look. Tyler, off the record, if you're gone, so are we. I blinked. Seriously? She nodded. We don't work with companies run by amateurs. That was all I needed. On the night of the annual spring gala, I was representing our international clients, the same division I'd built from scratch over 6 years. Everything felt perfect. The venue looked good. The investors were pleased. For a moment, I let myself believe hard work actually counted for something. Then my phone buzzed. One text from Richard Carter. Tyler, please come to my office first thing tomorrow morning. I felt my stomach twist. 2 kids heading to college. Mortgage. 23 years of building security. All of it rested on my reputation staying intact in this industry. I barely slept that night. By 7:30 a.m., I was standing in front of Richard's desk. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Tyler, I'm afraid I have to... But before he could finish, I leaned in. Check your inbox first. He went pale, because what he didn't know, I'd been ready for this moment for months. Richard Carter stared at his screen like it was a live grenade. He clicked once, twice, opened the folder I'd quietly sent him the night before. Inside were 43 forwarded emails, every single one from Nathaniel. Some were laughable, some were borderline illegal. There was Nathaniel ordering departments to falsify delivery reports. Nathaniel demanding the finance team adjust numbers to make his forecasts look good. Nathaniel emailing me directly with gems like, just do what I say or I'll make sure you're out. I stood silently, letting Richard take it all in. Finally, he leaned back in his chair. He sighed hard. I had no idea. I folded my arms. Didn't you? He flinched. Because the truth was, he had known. At least part of it. But turning a blind eye is easier when it's your golden boy acting out. Richard buried his head in his hands. Tyler, why didn't you come to me sooner? I kept my voice level. Because I thought this company believed in merit. And because I didn't want to be the reason your family imploded. He looked up, eyes showing guilt and fear. The board can never see this. I gave him a hard look. I'm not here to threaten you, Richard. I'm here because your son walked into my office yesterday morning and demanded I fire a team that just saved you $3. $5 million. And when I refused, he promised to destroy my career. I paused. I came here because I won't let a 19-year-old brat treat people like garbage while you look the other way. For a moment, the only sound in the room was silence. Then Richard whispered, "What do you want?" I smiled just slightly. I want my career. I want the Johnson team protected. I want this nonsense to stop before it blows up in your face. And Nathaniel, that's your problem. I left Richard's office with my heart pounding. It wasn't about revenge. Not yet. It was about justice. About making sure hard work still mattered. But by Monday morning, I realized Nathaniel wasn't going to let it go. It started with whispers, emails I was suddenly left off of, meetings rescheduled without me, budget approvals delayed, the subtle art of corporate sabotage. I caught Nathaniel smirking outside a strategy meeting I'd been excluded from. He actually winked at me. Here's the thing about entitled people like Nathaniel. They think power is a game they can rig. What they never realize is sometimes the people they try to step on are the ones holding the foundation together. A week later, Richard called me back in. You're right, he said quietly. Nathaniel's out of control. I raised an eyebrow. Good, so you've spoken with him? Richard looked away. I tried. He won't listen. He told me if I don't get rid of you, he'll go to the board and cause trouble. I actually laughed. 19 years old and threatening board action. Impressive. Richard didn't laugh. Tyler, I'm afraid I have to suspend you temporarily. Just to calm him down. It's not personal. I stared at him, dead serious. It's never personal, is it? He winced. I'll make it right. I promise. But I already knew he wasn't going to stand up to his son. He was going to sacrifice me, the person who built his international division, because it was easier. I nodded politely and walked out of his office with my head high. But I wasn't defeated, because Richard had no idea what was about to hit him. Walking out of Richard Carter's office that morning, I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. I'd learned long ago that in corporate life, loyalty often dissolves under pressure, especially when family's involved. But what Nathaniel and his father didn't realize was I wasn't standing alone. I wish I could say I felt triumphant. But honestly, I just felt ready. Because Nathaniel Carter had spent months thinking he could push me out with empty threats and childish tantrums. What he didn't understand was simple. You can't bully people who have nothing left to lose and everything to fight for. By the time my suspension hit the internal email list, two things happened simultaneously. Gregory and Allen submitted their joint report directly to the board of directors. And Eastbridge Global sent a formal letter of concern to Richard Carter with a warning about withdrawing future business if leadership changes weren't made. The official notice hit company-wide email at 9:17 a.m. On a Tuesday. Tyler Brennan, administrative leave pending internal review. No explanation, no details. Just a cold, sterile sentence announcing that I was, for all intents and purposes, out. But what Richard Carter didn't know, the review had already started. And it wasn't about me. At 10:05 a.m., Gregory and Allen submitted their joint report directly to the board of directors. It wasn't dramatic. No accusations, no finger-pointing, just cold, hard facts. Nathaniel Carter had attempted to manipulate financial data on multiple occasions. He had issued directives outside of his authority, risking contractual violations. He had interfered with compliance procedures, and Richard Carter, by omission or willful ignorance, had allowed it to continue. The report ended with a simple recommendation. We advise immediate review of leadership accountability and potential breaches of fiduciary duty. By 11:30 a.m., the boardroom was in lockdown. I wasn't there, of course. But Gregory kept me updated via text. Richard looks like he's aged 10 years in an hour. Nathaniel tried to blame you. Didn't go well. Board isn't buying it. They want answers. I read every message with a strange sense of calm. I hadn't leaked anything to the board myself. I hadn't gone public. I didn't have to. Truth came out on its own. Around 2 p.m., Richard called me. I let it go to voicemail. He tried again. By the third call, I picked up. Tyler, I think we need to talk. I let him sweat for a moment. About my suspension? He exhaled sharply. About everything. We met in his office late that afternoon. For once, Nathaniel wasn't hovering in the background. Richard looked beaten. The confident CEO mask was gone. The board wants to meet with you tomorrow morning, he said quietly. I nodded. He hesitated. They've asked for Nathaniel's immediate resignation, and for me to step down temporarily pending review. I didn't flinch. Sounds appropriate. Richard gave me a bitter smile. You really did it. You destroyed him. I met his gaze steadily. I didn't destroy anyone. Nathaniel did that himself. I just refused to cover it up. For a moment, I thought he'd explode, but instead he sagged in his chair. You were the best we had, he whispered. I should have backed you. I stayed silent. In that moment, there was nothing left to say. At 49, you understand the difference between power and authority. Power is given, inherited, appointed. It's a title on a business card, a corner office, a family name. Authority is earned through competence, through crisis, through keeping your word when it costs you, through the 20 times you stayed late to fix someone else's mistake, through the deals you closed when everyone else said it was impossible. Nathaniel had power. His last name gave him that. I had authority. 23 years gave me that. In any real fight, authority wins. Every single time. Late one night, weeks before everything settled, I'd sat in my home office staring at the family photo on my desk. Caroline asleep upstairs. Kids' rooms dark. Everything I'd built, the house, the college funds, the security, had been at risk. Nathaniel had wanted to take that from me. Not because I was incompetent, because I wouldn't bow to a teenager. But I'd protected it, not through anger or revenge, through patience, documentation, strategy, allies. Young Tyler, the guy I was at 25, would have stormed into Richard's office the first time Nathaniel stepped out of line, would have demanded justice, would have burned bridges in righteous fury. 49-year-old Tyler knew better. You don't win wars by charging the hill. You win by building the case, by waiting for the enemy to overextend, by striking when you're ready, not when you're angry. That's what experience teaches you. The next morning, I walked into the boardroom I'd never been invited to before. 12 directors. Everyone looked serious. But when I sat down, something changed. They didn't grill me. They didn't accuse. They asked for my perspective. And I gave it to them, professionally, calmly, backed with facts. I told them about the deals I'd negotiated, the partnerships I'd protected, the risks I'd mitigated that Nathaniel's recklessness had created. I watched as heads nodded around the table. By the end of that meeting, the chairman leaned forward. Tyler, we'd like you to consider stepping into an interim leadership role for the international division while we restructure. I could hardly believe it. I wasn't just reinstated. I was promoted. But even as I shook hands and smiled politely, a part of me stayed guarded. Because promotions come and go. Titles shift. Power is temporary. But respect, that's earned. And it's the one thing Nathaniel Carter would never get back. 2 weeks after that board meeting, Nathaniel Carter was gone. No farewell email, no announcement. Just gone. I heard whispers he'd been shipped off to manage family investments overseas. In other words, they banished him quietly to avoid scandal. And Richard Carter? He stepped down voluntarily, citing personal reasons. The company's internal memo thanked him for his service and highlighted his commitment to future transition efforts. Corporate speak for, "We won't fire you publicly if you disappear quietly." On my first official day as interim director of international operations, I walked past Nathaniel's old corner office. Empty, just a nameplate lying on the desk. I didn't gloat. I didn't celebrate. Because this wasn't about proving a point. It was about protecting the people who'd been risking their careers under his chaotic shadow. I called my team together for a meeting. No fancy speeches, no victory laps, just one simple promise. I don't care about titles or last names. I care about work, integrity, and respect. That's how we move forward together. And for the first time in weeks, I saw real relief on their faces. A month later, Eastbridge Global renewed their contract. Not because we begged them, but because Andrea Wells called me personally and said, "We want to work with leaders who know what they're doing." That's you. Other clients followed. Deals started closing again. Stability returned. The company didn't just recover, it started thriving. Then came the final twist. The board invited me for a private dinner. I wasn't sure what to expect, but sitting there across from people who once viewed me as just another department head, I realized something had changed. They weren't looking at me as a placeholder anymore. They were looking at me as a leader. The chairman spoke first. "Tyler, we'd like to offer you the permanent role of Vice President of International Operations. Effective immediately." I paused, letting that sink in. "I have conditions," I said quietly. He smiled. "Let's hear them." And I laid them out. 0 tolerance for nepotism in leadership roles. Transparent accountability standards for all executives. Full authority to build and protect my team my way. The chairman nodded after each one. Agreed. I signed the contract a week later. Not for the title, not even for the raise, but because I wanted to make sure no one else would have to fight the same battles I did, just to be treated with basic dignity. I overheard Nathaniel once, months before everything fell apart. He was talking to one of the new interns during a strategy meeting he'd crashed uninvited. "These old guys," he'd said, sounding like an ass, "they don't get it. Spend 20 years kissing ass to climb the ladder. That's over. You disrupt. You network. You move fast and break things." The intern had nodded eagerly. "My dad's generation built this company on handshake deals and golf games," Nathaniel continued. "That's done. It's all digital now. All about who you know on social, what investors you can pitch." He'd laughed. "Brennan? Guy's been here 6 years doing the same thing over and over. He's dead weight." I'd stayed silent in the back of the room. Let him talk. After they left, I sat there for a moment. 23 years. Built relationships with partners across 4 continents. Negotiated billion-dollar contracts. Weathered recessions, trade wars, currency collapses. And to this kid, I was dead weight because I didn't have a TikTok following. The arrogance of youth. The delusion of privilege. But you know what? I'd seen his type before. Loud, confident, utterly convinced the world owed them success. They never lasted. Because when the real storm hit, when clients demanded results, when deals fell through, when things got hard, they folded. Experience wins. Always. I just had to prove it one more time. And I did. 6 months into my new role, I promoted the Johnson team. Martinez took over Latin American operations. Torres led Asia Pacific. Williams ran European expansion. All promoted, all earned. The Johnson team weren't just numbers on a spreadsheet. Martinez had a kid in college. Torres was supporting elderly parents. Williams had just bought his first house. These were people I'd mentored, trained, built up from entry level. I'd be damned if some trust fund brat was going to destroy their careers because they annoyed him. That's when it hit me. This was the win that mattered. Not the title, not the salary bump, not even crushing Nathaniel. building something real, something that rewarded people who did the work, something that would outlast me. Looking back now, sitting in my corner office with a view of the city, I realized something. Nathaniel tried to destroy my career because I didn't follow his orders. Richard tried to sacrifice me to save himself. But neither of them understood the truth about power. Real power doesn't come from titles or threats. It comes from competence, character, and the people who trust you to lead them well. And that's something no spoiled heir and no cowardly CEO can ever fake. At some point in your late 40s, you start thinking about what you leave behind. Not money, though that matters. Not titles, those fade fast. You think about the people you built up, the standards you set, the times you stood up when it would have been easier to sit down. Martinez, Torres, Williams, they're not just my team. They're proof that merit still matters. That hard work pays off. That you can build something real in a world full of Nathaniel Carters. And when I retire into 10 years, when I hand this division over to whoever comes next, they'll inherit something worth protecting. Not because of my name, because of the foundation we built together. That morning, standing in Richard's office 3 months earlier, I'd made a choice. Not to fight dirty, not to burn bridges, but to document, strategize, and wait for the right moment. Patience beats fury. Strategy beats emotion. Building beats destroying. That's what 23 years taught me. And it's what Nathaniel Carter will never understand, because understanding it requires actually doing the work. Earning the scars, learning from failure. His whole life, he'd been handed things. Power, position, opportunities he didn't earn. Mine, I'd built every inch of it. Every client relationship, every successful deal, every person I'd trained who went on to lead. That's not bragging. That's fact, and in the end, facts won. The difference between Nathaniel and me wasn't talent. It wasn't intelligence. It wasn't even opportunity. It was understanding that respect is earned, not demanded. That leadership is service, not privilege. That the people below you on the org chart are the ones who make you look good, or expose you when you're a fraud. Nathaniel thought being the CEO's son made him untouchable. What he didn't realize was that companies aren't kingdoms. They're ecosystems. And when you poison the ecosystem, the whole thing rejects you. I'd watched it happen before. Hotshot MBA kids who thought disruption meant breaking things without knowing how to build them back. Trust fund consultants who talked a great game but couldn't close a deal to save their lives. Every industry has them. Most get filtered out early. A few make it far enough to do real damage. Nathaniel was on track to be one of those, until he picked the wrong person to push around. The irony? I wasn't trying to be a hero. I was just trying to protect my team and my career. But sometimes doing the right thing for the right reasons is enough. Sometimes the system actually works if you know how to work it. A year into my VP role, I implemented the mentorship program I'd promised. Formal, funded, open to everyone, not just the people with the right last names. 12 junior employees got paired with senior leaders across departments. Real training, real opportunities, real feedback. Within 6 months, 3 of them got promoted. Within a year, 2 moved into management roles. That's what I'm talking about when I say legacy. Not statues or plaques, people. Careers built on actual competence. The board loved it, called it innovative leadership development. I called it what we should have been doing all along. But I'll admit something. Late at night sometimes I think about Nathaniel. Not with anger, not with satisfaction, with something closer to pity. He had every advantage. Money, connections, a direct path to the top. All he had to do was show up, learn the business, treat people with basic respect, and wait his turn. He couldn't do it. The entitlement was too strong. The need to prove himself without actually doing the work was too powerful. And now he's in Singapore burning through his trust fund on some blockchain startup that's probably already dead. His LinkedIn still says entrepreneur and disruptor. His actual experience: 3 months of screwing up a company his father built. That's the thing about people who've never earned anything. They don't know how to value what they have. They don't understand that reputation takes decades to build and seconds to destroy. I earned mine, one deal at a time, one relationship at a time. One person I trained who went on to do great things. And when Nathaniel tried to take it from me, he learned what happens when you confuse your father's legacy with your own competence. You lose. Richard called me once, about 8 months after he stepped down. I almost didn't answer, but curiosity got the better of me. "Tyler," he said, voice tired, "I wanted to apologize. I waited. I should have listened to you. Should have dealt with Nathaniel sooner. Should have had the courage to stand up to my own son." "Yes," I said simply. "You should have." Silence on the other end. "For what it's worth," he continued, "I'm glad you fought back. Glad you didn't let him destroy you. The company's better off with you leading that division than it ever was with him anywhere near it. I appreciated that. But I also knew it was too little, too late. Richard, you were a good CEO once. You built something real, but you let your blind spot for your son nearly destroy it. I paused. I hope you're doing right by him now. Teaching him what you should have taught him years ago. I'm trying, he said quietly. Not sure he's listening. That's on him now. Not you. We hung up shortly after. I haven't heard from him since. Some people think I was ruthless, that I orchestrated a takedown, destroyed a kid's career before it started, forced a CEO out of his own company. They're not entirely wrong, but here's what they miss. I didn't start this fight. I tried to avoid it. I covered for Nathaniel. I fixed his mistakes. I gave him chance after chance to grow up and get his act together. He chose to come after me. He chose to threaten my team. He chose to demand my silence while he turned the division I built into his personal playground. I just chose not to let him win. There's a difference between being ruthless and refusing to be a victim, between fighting dirty and fighting smart, between revenge and justice. I documented everything, built a case, used the system the way it's supposed to work. And when the moment came, I presented facts, not emotions. That's not ruthless. That's professional. And if more people fought back that way, with evidence, strategy, and patience, we'd have fewer Nathaniel Carters running companies into the ground. Looking back now, 18 months after that Thursday morning when Nathaniel slammed his fist on my desk, I'm not the same person I was. I'm more cynical about corporate loyalty, more realistic about how power works, more aware that doing good work isn't always enough. Sometimes you have to protect it, fight for it, prove its value again and again. But I'm also more confident, more certain of my own worth, more willing to stand up when something's wrong, even when it costs me. And I know this. At 49, with a decade left before I hand this division to the next generation, I'm going to build something that lasts. Not a monument to myself. A foundation, standards, systems that reward merit over privilege, so that the next person in my position doesn't have to fight the same battle I did, so that the next Nathaniel Carter gets filtered out before he does damage, so that Martinez, Torres, Williams, and everyone else who does the actual work gets the recognition they deserve. That's legacy. That's what matters. Nathaniel's in Singapore burning his trust fund on a doomed startup. Richard's consulting from his beach house, pretending retirement was his choice. Me? I'm building the next generation of leaders who'll earn their way up. Martinez running Latin America. Torres leading Asia Pacific. Williams handling Europe. All promoted, all earned. That's not a title or a corner office. That's legacy, the kind you build, not inherit. The kind that outlasts you. And at 49, with good years still ahead, that's the only victory that matters anymore. Because when you strip away the titles, the money, the corner offices, the only question that matters is this: did you leave things better than you found them? I'm damn well going to make sure the answer is yes.